Laura, welcome to Inclusive Cyber. How's it going?
Day to day, trying to enjoy the last couple of days of summer.
This year has gone super fast. I don't know about you, but I thought we are still in January, and I just recently looked at the calendar. We're in middle of September, so it's been super crazy. But again, super excited to talk to you about your career journey. I think it's really going to resonate with the audience. My goal with this podcast is to just highlight stories that are one kind of transparent, but tell a story, an impactful story that whether you're in middle part of your career or already 20 plus or even barely a week into IT or cybersecurity, I think everybody has value and everybody has a story to share. Let's start at the beginning. Can you provide a little quick background?
Currently, I'm an IT admin for a cybersecurity organization, but I have around 8 years of experience within the IT field. And I started maybe a little over a decade ago. There was a little gap there that I took off to start my own business. But I was able to jump back in. My whole journey has just been really exciting. And talking to you brought back so many memories and so many hurdles that I had to jump through and that I totally forgot about. Going forward, it's already going to make me so excited to keep moving on in my career. Because sometimes you forget how much you've actually done.
Right, right. We really need to take a step back and see how we got here in this journey. There's always going to be obstacles, hurdles, and just tough moments, but there's going to be time where we're riding high and just kicking butt, for the lack of a better term there. So let's start at the beginning. And what got you interested into IT and cybersecurity?
I am the youngest of four, and my siblings went to college for a tech degree. So one of my brothers went for computer science. And they're much older than me. So I grew up with all of the newer technology and just seeing them work with it. And it just became my day to day. When I decided to go to school, I actually went through a couple of majors. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Right away, my family was like, oh, something with computers. You're already good at that. Do that. I fought it so hard. I was like, no, I don't want that. No, thank you. I'm going to figure it out. Anyway, after five different choices, eventually I did end up with management information systems, which is a little bit of both tech classes and business classes, which actually was really perfect for how the rest of my life eventually went. I unfortunately had to drop out of college, so I didn't even finish. But I still credit having that in my resume for getting me my first IT job. And I started again over 10 years ago as a computer assistant at a middle school. And I was there for a couple of years. I was making horrible money. At that time, I didn't think you could make a decent living wage without a college degree. So I was there for a couple of years. And eventually, the last year that I was working there, one of the teachers was like, why are you here? You're so good at your job. Why are you here? You could be making so much money. And I didn't believe her. I was like, no, I don't have a college degree. My path can't go that much further. I didn't realize that there was more. And she pushed me for a couple of months. And eventually she came up to me and she's like, hey, my brother-in-law works for a different district. They're hiring right now. I already gave him your information. Just go interview. She's like, if you don't get it, you don't get it, but just go interview. So I went and did not get the job. Did not get the job at all. But it opened the door for me to realize that I was able to answer those technical questions, that I am capable of doing that job. And it actually pushed me to continue. And maybe 2 months after that, I was able to get a mid-level IT specialist job at a different district. And I remember getting my first paycheck. It was double the money that I was making. And it was at that point, I was a single mom of twins and I had zero money. So when I saw my check double, I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this was possible, right? It opened up my mind even more of okay, if I could do this, I could do more, right? Working at a school district is an amazing opportunity for anybody starting in their IT career. because you touch every aspect of IT, especially smaller districts, right? You're going to do the very basic of just changing a password to dealing with the networks, to dealing with third party vendors and the C suite executives. And you touch basically every every part of it. The IT world is always moving and it's always looking for people. And luckily, I was able to come back to it. And here I am.
No, I love that story, Laura. And especially how that spark came. It came with family, right? That you're seeing all this technology around you. And is it safe to assume that your older siblings were your first mentors?
I'm missing now, actually. I think they were maybe not mentors, but they were maybe an inspiration because there was such an age gap. So I was able to see them go through the different processes. So maybe a mentor, like an indirect mentor, I would say maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. One of the biggest questions that I always ask my guests and people in my network is, do you have a mentor? Because I think mentors are super vital and important within our careers, and not only cybersecurity or IT, but any career choice that we're looking to get into. So pivoting off the mentor just for a second there, you had also mentioned that working at a school district, that it gives you all these different opportunities or different hats to learn a lot of things. And I think now I talk to a lot of young people wanting to get into the industry, and they don't look at what's in their backyard, like state or local government jobs or even in school districts, because I think they're looking for maybe the Silicon Valley, the recognized named brands, the Apples, the Googles, the Microsofts, et cetera. So you bring up a valid point that we need to be looking at our backyard that, okay, they're not going to be paying as much as Silicon Valley, but what you're learning is just going to build the foundation to propel your career. So I appreciate you sharing that. So you'd mentioned it was the lady at the first school district asking you, why are you here? We might need other people in our lives to kind of push us because maybe we're not thinking bigger. And other people might be seeing, hey, there's something in you. So maybe they were your first mentor, kind of looking out for you.
100%. And again, going back to the fact that I don't have that proper education, my mentors and managers were the ones that got me to where I am at now. Because if it wasn't for them pushing me, if it wasn't for them seeing what I can actually do, I wouldn't have made it this far. That's who you need around. That's the people that you want to surround yourself with in your personal life and your professional life. Because you don't know what you say is going to just change somebody's life completely.
Yeah, that is definitely so true. So walk me through that first job. So you're at this school district and your pay doubled. How long were you there? What was your next step in your career?
I wasn't there very long. I think I was there maybe a little under 2 years. At that point, just where my life was, I decided that I wanted to start my own business. But now I have different skills that I could jump into what my passion was at that point, which was photography. So completely different. I don't know if you want to go into that, but
Yeah, I guess more of your, I love the fact that it's your passion. So I'm talking to a lot of people going into entrepreneurship, but more around IT and cybersecurity. But so how long were you doing your passion as your main job?
so I had my business for 5 years. Um, and again, I'm going to credit it to my last job because they were the ones who gave me a lot of skills to just talk to a bunch of different people. And I started with nothing, like zero money, because at that point I was barely like having any savings. Within a year, I had my first studio. Within 2 years, I had multiple studios. So eventually getting a storefront. Even that in itself helps me now in my career because, again, every job that you have gives you so many skills, so many different skills that you can always adapt in the future. And unfortunately, COVID happened. So, I had to close down, and it was sad. It was very upsetting because I was doing amazing. And at this point, I could probably go back, but I'm not mad coming back into my original career. Because again, you grow, you have different needs growing up, and just in your current life, what works best for you at that point. I came back to IT, and luckily, like I mentioned, there's always a need, and tech is moving so fast that there's always going to be opportunity. It's just finding that opportunity to get back in.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that story there, Laura, especially finding your passion, being successful, and then here comes, some might argue, the black swan events, events that nobody can foresee or predict. Some people argue that there's no such thing as black swans, but in this case, let's just call, COVID a black swan event. You can never prepare for that. And you, like probably lots of small business owners, really suffered during that time where they need people coming into the store to sustain that particular business. So you jump back into cybersecurity. What was that initial role?
So coming back, because there was a gap there, I did realize that, and maybe this was like a personal thing in my head. I was like, oh, like, how am I going to jump back in? Like, we're probably using completely different programs. Like, I was scared, right? I decided to take a lower role to just kind of, again, get used to the current landscape, to get used to what are the new trends. I did move back, and honestly, it was the best decision I could have made. I had those skills already. I reminded myself of what I already knew, learn additional skills. Um, but it also allowed me to have extra mental space to grow my skills. Going back to mentors, my manager and director at that job were able to see how much I'm able to grow in a such short period of time that they gave me even more opportunities to grow within my career, and also confidence. I feel like sometimes we forget how much confidence we get from our managers. If they're great managers, they want that for you, right? They want
Right.
you to grow because not only are you growing, you're also helping the company. Honestly, the best move I could have done was take a step back and really focus more on my education at that point and just grow.
So, in regards to your bosses and directors, was it part of a mentorship program within the company, or was it them providing that feedback? Because I always get this question as well: how do I find a mentor? After I tell people to find mentors, they're like, how do I do it? One approach, a sponsor-based company sponsorship. And then the other one is maybe reaching out to people in your network to say, hey, can you be my mentor? In your particular case, I'm assuming it was them being great leaders. They saw something in you that they wanted to provide you positive affirmations and just information for you to grow.
Yeah, it was definitely a very natural thing that happened. I think with all of my mentors, that's always been the case. I'm someone that I'm just constantly motivated. I'm constantly doing stuff. There's no end with me. Like I'm always doing stuff, which is an awesome thing to have because again, you're never gonna finish what you're doing. When it comes to education, right? And
Yeah.
education is amazing, and it's only gonna keep pushing you forward. They saw that I was very motivated
Mhm.
and they saw that I had these skills to pick up extra things that the company needs. And because of that, they made sure that I was happy where I was at because they don't want to lose somebody that they can trust.
It's kind of a symbiotic relationship, right? Somebody actually going 110%, and then the leaders or the bosses kind of meeting them. Oh, okay, we need to probably give this person a little bit more work, a little bit more responsibility to help them get that confidence. Now you're in the industry. What has been your biggest challenges and how have you overcome them?
The biggest challenge for me personally has because I had to learn the skills that I have by myself at first. I didn't realize that there was specific words for some of these actions that I was doing and steps that I was doing. Like there was actual vocabulary for it.
Right.
And because my lack of that, um, I think my challenge was finally putting two and two together because I was like, oh, like I know exactly what you're talking about. I just didn't know that word. I have pros and cons on getting your bachelor's and certificates. My lack of that, I wouldn't say necessarily that it helped elevate me at all, but it helped me in the sense that I was able to talk to anybody about what I was doing or what they need to be doing. Um, and obviously in non-tech roles, that is extremely helpful. And because I didn't know those proper terms, I explained to them without making anybody seem like they had no clue what was going on, right? I was able to explain it into their own terms because that's how I learned it. And
Right.
that alone just helped me again elevate me in my career because these were like C-level executives, right? And they were like, "Oh, this person is amazing. We need to keep this person." It was definitely the vocabulary, and even though it helped me, I do realize now, like, I do need to take a step back, and even though I may know certain things, I do need to connect some dots.
I know we're going to be talking about the certification versus education requirements for entry into cybersecurity and IT. A lot of people can't pick which one is the right one or which one you should go to because I think you make a valid point, Laura, is you learned based on experience, right? Based on people around you feeding you all this information. And it wasn't the proper word or terminology about X, Y, and Z, but it still gets you to the end result, right? And now the biggest issue in our industry is this battle that, well, to get into this industry, you need formal education or a certification. So, what are your thoughts when it comes to that? Because I think your story is extremely unique because you didn't go that route and you still were able to be successful. I guess I'll leave it there because I have another follow up to that.
I will never say education is bad. If I had the opportunity to finish school, I would have done it. But we hear it all the time that people or companies are always looking for people to fill roles. There's a lack of roles. And I remember I was talking to a friend and we were talking about this specific thing, right? How
Mhm.
they're, looking for people. Eventually he's like, oh, you should apply. You should come to my company. And I was like, okay, cool. So I started telling him my experience. And then I told him that I didn't have a college degree. He's like, oh, sorry. Our minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree. I may have not gotten the job, but I had what they were asking. But because
Right.
of that paper, suddenly I'm no longer a candidate, but I have exactly what you're asking for. I think having that requirement stops a lot of people from even getting into the industry. I mean, there's certain positions that you definitely need formal education in, but there's a lot of positions that you can just learn. Like
Yes.
someone can just teach you. And again, it's that opportunity. And I feel like and it's getting better. I think the industry is getting way better about giving opportunities, but we're not quite there yet.
Would probably be a contrarian there. I'm not seeing it too much in the industry, but I definitely agree with you. And it does stop a lot of candidates that had that experience. But then the other bigger issue is what you also mentioned that there's all these, 4 point something million unfilled cybersecurity jobs globally. I tend to push back on that number because I think it is a made up number and a lot of nonprofit organizations and trying to think of the European entity that wrote a report on this, and they were citing it was this kind of circular reporting using the same stats that everybody's been talking about. But I think one thing I have been tracking is the job losses for the past 3 years, all the layoffs. So you have massive layoffs and for the past 3 years, there have been over 400,000 here in the US alone when it comes to IT and cybersecurity. That's roughly the same amount that we have gaps in. So the gap's now double? Is it now the same? Do we take that into account? I think there's a lot of gatekeeping in that particular case you just explained. It's policy gatekeeping, right? Because we need people to have this education. Well, do you really, right? If you really need people to fill in this role, you could just delete that. In experience, I would say maybe in this particular situation is more valuable than school. But to your original point, I agree. And especially being minorities, that education is extremely important. But then, of course, nothing is black or white. But look how expensive school is getting. Public schools, right?
So what I will say with that is, for my daughters, I still want them to get a college degree because it'll open so many doors. They need that for just that opportunity, right? Yes, I was able to get a career without it, but I could have probably been here maybe 6 years ago had I had the proper education. I pushed through and I'm still here, but people don't have that time to do that as well. And for my daughters, I am going to make them finish school just for that door to be open.
Agree with you. And for me, I think it's just how expensive it's just gotten out of control. But so I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm a brand new analyst. Laura, Laura, I love all your work. What should I get? A cybersecurity certification or should I go to school?
I would actually have them kind of look at their current life. How is it going to work in your life? Because there's people who went to school, there's people who just did workshops or just got certificates that were able to get there. So we know the ending is there. But what route is going to be more successful for you in your current life? Because your current life has a lot of impact in your career. Like you mentioned, money. Do they have the money to go to school? If they don't, why are we going to put them in debt when there's a lot of opportunities to get certificates and a lot of grants to get certificates? If the opportunity is there where they can financially afford to go to school, they have the time to go to school, I would always push them for that route because, again, that's going to open so many doors. So I personally think it's looking at where your life is and where you expect your personal life to be in the next couple of years. Because that, again, it's going to impact your career, your whole life. Your personal life is going to impact your career.
That's fair. I like that answer. So let's transition now to the word of the millennia. I think quantum computing, once we get there, I'll be old and gray once that officially comes out, but generative artificial intelligence. So I always ask these kind of broad macro to micro. So is Gen AI good for society? And then is it good for cybersecurity? Good or bad?
Both, right? Good and bad. For my personal life, I love it. It helps me so much. But I feel like right now we're in that learning gap. Like right now, it's still people figuring out what it does. Once we move past that, I think it's super helpful. I use it to fix my grammar, to fix my emails, especially having English be my second language. I love it. It is like my best friend right now.
Right.
But, and as we know, there's a lot of regulations are going through and we're figuring out what is a proper way to go about it. Because without it, yeah, it could go crazy and it could be scary. It doesn't matter where we're at. There's always, I feel, right? There's always going to be bad people that are going to use it for bad things. That's unfortunately something that we can try to control, right? But there's so much good from it that there's no reason to completely get rid of it. I think it needs to start becoming, just like when computers became popular, right? People had to learn how to use it. And now you can't really get a job without knowing how to use a computer, how to use technology.
Right.
So I think that's going to be AI. That's the new thing that people are going to have to learn to work with certain jobs.
Right. And so for me, I got to be fully transparent. When I first started playing around with ChatGPT, yeah, just amazing. I'm like, oh my God, it could do this, it could do that. But now, for me, the novelty is worn off. at least from my use cases, right? And I know businesses are trying to incorporate into very innovative ways, but a lot of things that I'm hearing is, well, what about the data, right? One, it could be tarnished. It could be representing only one perspective. So then if that's the case, they always use garbage in, garbage out. So how do we as a society make sure that one, the data is valid and accurate? Because now we have this misinformation, disinformation everywhere. How do we protect ourselves when it comes to that? How do we combat the data? How do we get that accurate, if at all?
There's always going to be a discrepancy, Unfortunately, I feel like going back to the learning curve, we do need to teach people, hey, this is what sensitive information is. We don't want this sensitive information onto AI. We don't want it to be recorded. We don't want people to be able to access this. I don't think we'll be able to remove even the biases, right? Like that you mentioned, there's so many different people putting information that we can get more diverse thoughts in there. But unfortunately, I don't exactly know how the machine learning works, but um, there is a problem currently with it. And I think it'll get better. But again, with limitations, but that's figuring out right now, what are those?
For sure. I'm actually waiting for the video Sora from OpenAI. So we just type in environments like frolicking in the moon with flowers, and then it spits out a video. That will kind of blow my mind and get me reinvigorated again with artificial intelligence. In regards to your entire journey, where do you see yourself in another 5, 10 years in this industry?
That's interesting because I always ask myself this. I still think that I am pretty new in my career, right? I mean, even though I do have a lot of years in it, I don't think I've completely decided, do I want to continue with jobs that are kind of just generalized, right? Do I want to zone in on something? And I think right now that's what I'm experimenting with cybersecurity and IT. There's just so many routes you could take. Right now, I don't know. I don't know where I want to go with it. I just know that I'm going to continue. I know that there's so much coming in this field. And that's, I think, makes anybody hopeful that there's always going to be a job market for it.
That's a fair point. It's constantly changing. 5 years ago, yes, there were, forms of AI and machine learning and all that. But now it's kind of front and center. I think being adaptable, being flexible, riding the wave as opposed to trying to swim upstream and the current is pushing you down and you just get tired. There's just a lot of opportunity. Well, one of the last topics I wanted to talk about when we're doing our pre-calls, you had mentioned that you want to get back to entrepreneurship and do a nonprofit. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. So, because of my experience and knowing how long it took me, it didn't need to take this long because just the lack of information, right? People gatekeeping and just me not knowing how to grow. I want to start a nonprofit, specifically marginalized groups and hopefully even more specific, single moms. People that were unfortunately unable to finish school, whether that was high school or college, and give them these skills to within IT. And my hope is, right, and as a nonprofit, I'm probably not going to have all the funding, but my goal for the organization for like 6 months to a year to get that experience to learn and get a better job, give them that first opportunity to get in the door. And like, yes, they're learning. Now they have that in their resume that they also work. They were working, like I mentioned, just being able to double your salary is life changing. Even though it might not even be a lot of money at that point, it just changes so much. And again, you just need somebody to give you that opportunity. And yeah, I really hope that I can do that in the future.
Yeah, that's definitely a beautiful cause there, Laura. I think that's what it's all about. Yes, we're going to meet people that, they don't have las ganas, that desire to do X, Y, and Z, but there are people that have like overabundance of desire and heart to be successful in whatever they're going, but they don't get the breaks or the opportunities because I would argue even the Elon Musk's, Bill Gates, they were lucky to be in situations. I think with Bill Gates, his school when he was growing up, one of six high schools in the country that the PTA decided to get a computer. They were like, this is the wave of the future. Let's put in the money to get a computer. So instead of him going partying, he would go into the school and just start coding. He had the desire, he had the ganas. But how many of those that come from different backgrounds have that same desire, but they don't have the same opportunity? They don't have the same tools to make an impact to their lives and maybe to the world. I wish you all the success whenever you begin. So for me, I love reading books and I'm in the middle of like 20. It's getting a little ridiculous. So what book would you like to share that you just recently read or in the middle of for the audience?
I have it right next to me because I was prepared for this question. I'm a big reader too. And this book specifically, I literally tell all the women that I meet to read it. I think it helped me navigate actually in my most like recent job switch, how to navigate that. So the book is The First, the Few, the Only. It's how women of color can redefine power in corporate America. I'm going to speak for Latinas. We're first generation. We don't have people who have experienced corporate America. We're like the first ones. We don't know how to navigate that. And when we
Right.
do start, yes, we'll meet other women, or we'll meet other women of color. But sometimes we don't speak about the hardships that come with that. And sometimes you feel alone, like, oh, like maybe it's just me, or maybe like this happened because I messed up. This book validates what you've been feeling. They explain different rules when it comes to helping other people. Like sometimes you just don't have the time or the energy for it, and that's okay. And if you do and you want to help certain ways, like it kind of shows you how to properly go about that. It's amazing. I, again, would recommend it to any woman who is starting or has been in corporate America, but it is an amazing read.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. But I'm going to give you the last word. Any final thoughts on what we discussed or anything that we didn't that you'd like to bring to the floor?
Just for anybody, if this is what you want, continue pushing. It might take a while. It might have multiple different life changes, but you'll always get to where you need to be. It might not be where you thought you wanted to be, but that's where you need to be at that certain moment. And don't get discouraged.
But again, I appreciate your time. This has been an amazing conversation. And hopefully in the future, I'm able to take inclusive cyber on the road and meet people in person instead of this digital, even though it's amazing that we can do this. I've interviewed people across the globe, but face to face is just a whole different ballgame. But thank you.
Of course, thank you for having me. And this is amazing, by the way. And I love seeing all of the episodes.